What do you do when the happiest day of your life is shattered by the man you love, and the trust you've built with him is suddenly destroyed? The morning sun streamed through the windows, casting a soft golden light over my wedding dress as I stood in front of the mirror. My heart raced with excitement, the anticipation of the day ahead filling me with joy. I was about to marry Asher, the man I had loved for 3 years. Everything felt perfect, the flowers, the music, the laughter. But as I looked at my reflection, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Asher, who had always made me feel safe, was distant today, his smile forced. I couldn't help but wonder what was really going on. I'm Ren, and this was meant to be the happiest day of my life. My hands trembled as I touched the intricate lace of my gown, hardly believing this moment had finally arrived. "You look stunning," my mom said, her voice thick with emotion as she helped adjust my dress. My best friend Indigo was putting the final touches on my veil while my sister Rowan was working on my makeup. The room was filled with excitement and the sweet scent of flowers. I had dreamed of this day for so long. Asher and I had been together for 3 years, and from our very first coffee date, I knew he was the one, the way he made me laugh, how he always made me feel safe, and how he looked at me with such depth. Our relationship wasn't perfect, but whose is? We worked through our challenges together. The wedding preparations had been stressful, of course. There had been the usual drama with seating arrangements, my future mother-in-law's unsolicited suggestions about everything, and the florist disaster when they canceled 2 weeks before the wedding. But as I stood there, looking at myself in the mirror, none of that mattered anymore. "It's almost time," Rowan said, checking her phone. My heart skipped a beat. In less than an hour, I'd be walking down the aisle toward my future husband. The ceremony venue was breathtaking. White roses and baby's breath lined the aisle, filling the air with their sweet fragrance. Soft piano music played as guests settled into their seats, and through the window of the bridal suite, I could see Asher greeting people with that warm smile that had stolen my heart. "Ready?" Dad asked, offering his arm. His eyes were misty, and I could feel his hand trembling slightly. I squeezed his arm gently, holding back my tears. "I'm ready, Dad." The music changed, and my bridesmaids began their walk down the aisle. Then it was our turn. As the wedding march began to play, the doors opened, and everyone stood. The sight before me took my breath away. Our loved ones gathered together, the beautiful decorations, and at the end of the aisle there was Asher. The moment our eyes met, everything else faded into the background. He looked so handsome in his black tuxedo, but it was the way he looked at me that truly made my heart flutter. Tears filled his eyes, and that smile I loved so much spread across his face. Each step I took toward him felt like magic. Dad's steady hand on my arm helped me stay grounded as we walked toward my future. The ceremony was flawless. We had written our vows, and Asher's words brought tears to everyone's eyes. When the minister pronounced us husband and wife, the joy that filled the room was overwhelming. If only I had known then just how quickly joy could turn to pain. The reception started beautifully. The ballroom shimmered with hundreds of twinkling lights, and the DJ played our favorite songs. Asher and I had just finished our first dance, and everyone cheered as he dipped me at the end. In that moment, everything felt perfect. At first, I noticed something was wrong during dinner. Asher kept checking his phone, his smile becoming more forced with each glance. When I asked if everything was okay, he just nodded and said, "Fine." But I knew that look on his face. Something was bothering him. "Babe, what's wrong?" I whispered, touching his arm gently. He pulled away, something he'd never done before. My stomach dropped, but I tried to ignore the feeling. "It's just wedding day stress," I told myself. Then I saw him talking with his best man, Reese. They were in the corner, and Reese was showing him something on his phone. Asher's face changed. I'd never seen him look so angry. When he looked over at me, his eyes were different, cold, distant. I was talking with my college friends when it happened. Asher marched over, his face red, his hands shaking. "Can we talk?" he said, but his voice was loud enough that nearby guests turned to look. Before I could suggest going somewhere private, he held up his phone. Want to explain these? His voice cracked with emotion. On his screen were photos of me, supposedly with another man, but they were edited, badly edited. Anyone who looked closely could see that. Asher, those aren't real, I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. Really? Because Reese has been getting messages all day about you and Finn having an affair. Finn, my coworker who was happily married with 3 kids, the same Finn who was sitting across the room with his wife. Asher, please think about what you're saying, I pleaded, aware of the growing crowd around us. Those photos are fake. Someone's trying to hurt us. But he wasn't listening. Months later, I'd learn about the dozens of anonymous messages he'd received throughout the day, each one designed to plant doubts in his mind. At that moment, though, all I could see was the man I loved turning into a stranger. How long? He demanded, his voice getting louder. How long have you been lying to me? Was anything real? The music had stopped. Everyone was staring. My hands were shaking, but I kept my voice calm. Asher, I have never cheated on you. Never. Those photos are fake, and if you weren't so upset right now, you'd see that. Stop lying. He slammed his hand on the table, making everyone jump. Glasses rattled, and someone gasped. I have proof. All those late nights at work, the business trips, were you with him? I looked around the room. My parents stood frozen, horror on their faces. Asher's mother was crying, and my sister was already pulling up Finn's Facebook page on her phone, probably looking for proof of where he was on the dates in question. But I didn't wait for any of that. The man standing in front of me wasn't the Asher I knew and loved. This man had let a few questionable photos and anonymous messages destroy his trust in me. I stood up slowly, the rustle of my white dress breaking the silence. I'm not going to stand here and defend myself against lies, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. When you're ready to think clearly and remember who I am, you know how to reach me. With my head held high despite the tears threatening to fall, I walked out of my own wedding reception. The drive to the hotel was a blur. My mascara streaked down my face, but I couldn't bring myself to care. The calm voice of the GPS telling me to turn right in 500 feet seemed almost mocking. How could everything around me feel so ordinary when my world had just shattered? I hadn't even taken off my wedding dress when my phone began to blow up messages, calls, and social media notifications all flooding in. Everyone had an opinion about what had just happened. My hands trembled as I scrolled through the endless messages. OMG, Ren, are you okay? I can't believe he did that. Those photos are fake. Call me when you can. Indigo, my best friend, had sent nearly 20 messages. I'm coming over, where are you? Please answer me. Finn's wife is furious. She's tearing Asher apart right now. I turned my phone off. I couldn't deal with it. The hotel room felt too big, too empty. My beautiful wedding dress, the one I'd spent months picking out, lay crumpled on the floor where I had let it fall. Just 6 hours ago, I had been a bride. Now I wasn't even sure who I was anymore. I looked at myself in the mirror, and the reflection confirmed what I felt: a mess. Half of my makeup had been washed away, replaced by tear tracks. My carefully styled hair had fallen flat. I looked exactly how I felt: broken. I tried to make sense of it all. Asher had always been the level-headed one in our relationship. He was the one who stayed calm when I was stressed about work, the one who could always see both sides of an argument. How had he changed so completely in a single day? The night stretched on endlessly. I replayed every moment in my head the way his eyes had shifted when he looked at me, the anger in his voice, the whispers from the guests. Sleep felt impossible. At 3:00 a.m., I finally turned my phone back on. Hundreds of notifications flooded in, but one message caught my eye. It was from Asher, sent just minutes ago. Ren, I've made a terrible mistake. I know you probably hate me right now, but please, when you wake up, let me explain. I found out the truth, and I've never felt more ashamed. I'll be waiting in the hotel lobby at 9:00 a.m. even if it's just for you to tell me you never want to see me again." I stared at the message until my eyes burned. What truth? And more importantly, did it even matter anymore? I finally managed to sleep around 4 a.m., but by 7:30 I was wide awake again. My phone showed 47 missed calls, over 200 messages, and countless social media notifications, but only one message mattered: Asher's from 3:00 a.m. I dragged myself to the bathroom, wincing at my reflection. Last night's makeup was a disaster, and my eyes were swollen from crying. As I splashed cold water on my face, my phone buzzed again. This time it was a long email from Asher with video attachments. "Ren, before you delete this, please watch the videos. I know I don't deserve your time, but you deserve to know the truth." My finger hovered over the delete button. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to let him feel the same pain I'd felt, but another part needed answers. With shaking hands, I pressed play on the first video. It was security footage from the wedding venue, time-stamped early yesterday morning. A figure I recognized walked into the frame. Rachel, my former bridesmaid, the same Rachel I'd had to remove from the wedding party last month after she'd made a scene about not being my maid of honor. In the video, she was slipping something into Reese's reset, the same reset he'd worn while showing Asher those photos. The next video showed her talking to the wedding coordinator, clearly agitated about something. The timestamp matched exactly when the coordinator had mysteriously started sending all the photos and messages to Reese. More videos followed, each one revealing pieces of an elaborate plan. Rachel had spent the entire morning planting evidence and spreading rumors. She'd even hired someone to create those fake photos. The final video showed her gleefully watching from a corner as Asher confronted me. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. Everything made sense now: the timing of the messages, why the photos looked rushed, why it had all happened so publicly. Rachel had wanted to destroy my wedding day, and she'd nearly succeeded. A new message popped up from Indigo. "Ren, have you seen the videos? Everyone has them now. Rachel's been posting on Facebook all night bragging about what she did. She didn't expect Asher to have access to the venue security cameras. She's deleted everything now, but we have screenshots." I looked at the time, 8:45 a.m. Asher would be waiting in the lobby for 15 minutes. My mind raced with questions. Yes, he'd been manipulated, but he'd also chosen to believe the worst about me. He'd humiliated me in front of everyone we knew. Could I forgive that? As I stared at my reflection, trying to decide what to do, another message came through. This one was from Finn's wife, Harlow. "Ren, we're pressing charges against Rachel for defamation. I've never seen such a calculated attempt to hurt someone. But first, go talk to Asher. He's been up all night gathering evidence to clear your name. He loves you, honey. Don't let that witch win." It was 8:55 a.m. Time to decide: stay here or go downstairs and face my husband. At exactly 9:00 a.m., I stepped out of the elevator into the hotel lobby. My heart nearly stopped. Asher wasn't just waiting. He was still in his wedding suit, looking like he hadn't slept at all. When he saw me, he stood up so quickly that he knocked over his coffee cup. He looked terrible. His eyes were red and swollen, his tie was gone, and his usually perfect hair was a mess. For a moment, we just stared at each other across the lobby. Other hotel guests walked between us, but it felt like we were in our own world. "Ren," he started, his voice cracking. "I don't even know how to begin." "Not here." I cut him off, nodding toward the curious onlookers. "My room." The elevator ride was silent. I could feel him watching me, but I kept my eyes on the floor numbers. Room 824 had never felt so far away. When we finally got inside, Asher broke down. "I'm so sorry," he sobbed, dropping to his knees. "I spent all night watching those security tapes over and over. I talked to everyone. I found all the evidence. Rachel, she played me like a fool. She knew exactly what buttons to push." I sat on the edge of the bed, maintaining distance. "Tell me everything. And he did. How Rachel had started small, planting tiny seeds of doubt weeks ago. How she'd manipulated Reese into showing Asher the photos at specific times during the wedding. How she'd timed everything perfectly to create maximum drama. But that's not an excuse, Asher said, wiping his eyes. I should have trusted you. You've never given me a reason not to. When I saw those photos, I lost my mind. But I should have known they were fake. I should have talked to you privately. You should have remembered who I am, I finished for him. 3 years together, Asher. 3 years of trust and love, and you let it all go in one day because of some badly edited photos. He flinched at my words. I know. When I finally calmed down enough to look at those photos, they weren't even good fakes. Rachel was counting on me being too emotional to notice, and I played right into her hands. You humiliated me, I said, feeling tears start again, in front of everyone we love. I did, he admitted, and I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you if you'll let me. Ren, I love you. What I did was unforgivable, but I'm asking for a chance to try to earn your forgiveness. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. Look at this. I've been up all night gathering evidence. Rachel didn't just target us, she's done this before. I found 3 other weddings she's tried to ruin. She's sick, Ren, and she nearly destroyed us. I took the phone, scrolling through screenshots, messages, and testimonies from other victims. Have you shown this to the police? He nodded. They're picking her up this morning. Finn and Harlow are pressing charges, and so are the other couples she's hurt. But none of that matters if I've lost you. For the first time since he'd arrived, I looked at him. Behind the guilt and shame in his eyes, I could still see the man I fell in love with, the man who'd spent all night fighting to uncover the truth, the man who looked utterly broken at the thought of losing me. I can't just forget what happened, I said slowly. I know, he whispered, hope and fear battling in his voice. But can we try to fix it? As Asher and I sat in my hotel room, going through the evidence, the full picture of Rachel's betrayal became clear. My phone buzzed with a message from Indigo. Turn on the local news now. We turned on the TV just in time to see Rachel being escorted out of her apartment in handcuffs. The news ticker flashed. Local wedding planner arrested for multiple counts of harassment and fraud. I can't believe she turned this into a business, I whispered, my eyes glued to the screen. Rachel had been charging people to sabotage weddings, jealous exes, angry relatives. Anyone with enough money and bitterness could hire her to ruin someone's special day. Asher scrolled through his phone. Look at this conversation between her and Reese from 2 weeks ago. She convinced him I had a right to know about your affair because his fiancé had cheated on him the year before. She knew exactly how to manipulate him. Text after text appeared, showing how Rachel had built her web of lies. She'd created fake social media accounts months earlier, carefully laying the foundation for her plan. She even hired a photography expert to produce the fake photos. Ren, Asher said softly, there's something else you need to see. He handed me his phone, showing a conversation from 3 years ago between Rachel and my ex, Tom. I swear I'll make her pay for choosing him over me, Rachel had written. It might take years, but I'll destroy her perfect little love story. My hand trembled. She spent 3 years planning this just because I started dating you after Tom and I broke up. She was obsessed with him. Asher explained. When you started dating me instead of giving Tom another chance, she lost it. But she waited. She was patient, biding her time until she could hurt you the most. Just then, Indigo burst into the room. They found her planning notebooks. She had everything mapped out: when to send each message, when to show the photos, and even which guests to target with rumors. She was recording everything for some kind of revenge wedding planning guide she wanted to publish. I felt nauseous. All those months I'd spent planning my dream wedding, and Rachel had been planning its destruction. She'd smiled in my face while plotting to ruin everything I cared about. The police need to talk to both of you, Indigo added. They found evidence linking her to 5 other ruined weddings, They're building a case against her, but they need your statements. After giving our statements to the police, Asher and I found ourselves sitting in the quiet coffee shop where we'd had our first date. We hadn't meant to come here. Our feet had just led us to this familiar place. "I know sorry isn't enough," Asher said, staring at his untouched coffee, his voice thick with emotion. "But I want to do whatever it takes to fix this. Tell me what you need." I took a deep breath, gathering my thoughts. "I need time, Asher. What happened yesterday, what Rachel did, what happened between us, it broke something in me. I still love you, but I'm hurt. Deeply hurt." "I understand." He nodded, his voice barely a whisper. "I'll give you all the time you need. Just please, don't give up on us." Our phones kept buzzing with messages of support. Friends and family had seen the news about Rachel's arrest. Everyone understood now, but the pain wasn't magically gone. "We need counseling," I said firmly. "Both couples and individuals. What Rachel did was awful, but we need to address why you were so quick to believe the worst about me." Asher reached across the table, hesitating before touching my hand. When I didn't pull away, he gently squeezed it. "Anything you want, I'll do anything. I'll do. And we need to have a serious talk about Reese's role in all this," I added. "He might have been manipulated, but he was still willing to help hurt me." "He's out as best man," Asher said immediately. "I've already told him. I need space to focus on rebuilding your trust." For the first time since everything happened, I felt a tiny spark of hope. The road ahead would be hard, but seeing Asher's willingness to do whatever it took to make things right gave me courage. "One day at a time," I suggested softly. "One day at a time," he agreed, relief flooding his face. Our phones hadn't stopped ringing since Rachel's arrest made the local news, but we needed to address everything our way, on our terms. Asher and I decided to post a joint statement on social media, not because we owed anyone an explanation, but because we wanted to take control of our story. "Hey, everyone," I started typing with Asher beside me. "By now, you've probably seen the news about what happened at our wedding. Yes, we were victims of a calculated attack by someone we thought was a friend, but we're choosing to focus on moving forward." The response was immediate. Comments flooded in. "We're so sorry we doubted you. We knew something wasn't right. Rachel is a monster. Take her down in court." But the hardest part was still to come. Facing our families. We arranged a small gathering at my parents' house. Everyone was there, both our families, our closest friends, and even Finn and Harlow. "I owe all of you an apology." Asher stood up, his voice shaking slightly. "I let a vindictive person manipulate me into doubting the woman I love. I hurt Ren, and I hurt all of you by causing such a scene." My mom, who hadn't said much since everything happened, finally spoke up. "You both have a long road ahead," she said softly. "But you have our support. What that woman did, it was evil, but don't let her win by giving up on each other." Reese wasn't invited to this gathering. He'd sent multiple apology messages, but we weren't ready to deal with him yet. His girlfriend, however, had reached out to me privately. She'd broken up with him over his role in the drama. The wedding venue called, offering us a free date to redo our reception. Several other vendors did the same. It was touching, but we weren't ready to think about that yet. We had more important things to focus on, like our first couples therapy session scheduled for next week, and my upcoming testimony at Rachel's hearing. She was facing multiple charges now, not just from us, but from all the other couples she'd targeted. "Whatever happens," Asher said, squeezing my hand as we left my parents' house, "we face it together this time. No more letting others come between us." I squeezed back. We had a long way to go, but we were on the right path. 2 weeks after the wedding disaster, Asher and I sat in our therapist's office, working through our third session. The tools we were learning, better communication, trust exercises, checking in with each other, were slowly helping us rebuild. "Tell Ren what scares you most," our therapist encouraged. "Losing you," he said without hesitation. "Every morning I wake up afraid that you'll realize you can't forgive me, that the damage is too deep." His voice cracked slightly. I reached for his hand, my voice steady but full of reassurance. I'm still here, I reminded him. Every day I choose to stay and work on us because I see how hard you're trying. We were slowly learning to have the difficult conversations that had once seemed impossible. We talked about why he had been so quick to believe those lies and how his parents' messy divorce had left deeper scars than he realized. While understanding didn't excuse his actions, it gave us the perspective to see what we needed to work on together. Rachel's criminal case was steadily moving forward. More victims were coming forward, and our testimony would help make sure she couldn't hurt anyone else. In a strange way, facing her together in court was a source of strength for us both. At home, we started creating new rituals. Every night we would sit down and share the highs and lows of our day, no distractions, just the two of us talking and really listening. Some nights we talked about the wedding day, processing the lingering emotions. Other times we focused on the future we were rebuilding together. One evening, as we sat on our balcony, Asher looked over at me and asked, "Do you think we'll ever have another wedding ceremony?" I thought for a moment before replying, "Maybe, but not yet. Right now, I'm more focused on building our marriage than planning another wedding. When we do it again, it'll be for us and no one else." He smiled, a smile that reached his eyes for the first time in weeks. "One day at a time. One day at a time," I agreed. 1 month after what should have been our wedding day, Asher and I found ourselves sitting on our favorite beach at sunset. The sound of the waves crashing against the shore filled the air as we shared a peaceful moment together. Rachel had pled guilty to all charges and was facing years in prison for her wedding sabotage business. The news had brought us a sense of closure, but we'd already moved past letting her actions define our story. "Look what I found," Asher said, pulling out an old photo booth strip from his wallet. It was from our first date, both of us making silly faces, carefree and full of excitement. "We'll get back to this," he promised. "Maybe even better than before." He was right. In many ways, we were stronger now, more honest, more intentional with our love. Our weekly therapy sessions had taught us how to truly listen to one another. We'd learned that trust isn't something given easily. It's something built, piece by piece, day by day. "I love you," I said, the words carrying more weight than ever. Not in spite of what had happened, but because of it. It was part of our story now. "Our story," he repeated, pulling me closer. "The good, the bad, and everything in between. Sometimes, the hardest storms bring the most beautiful rainbows." Is it possible to rebuild trust after it's been completely shattered by the person you loved and trusted most? Asher's confession and desperate plea for forgiveness didn't erase the pain of his betrayal. Yes, he had spent hours gathering evidence, uncovering Rachel's manipulation, and trying to prove that he'd been played. But the damage he caused in front of everyone at our wedding, his refusal to trust me in the first place, and the humiliation I felt, it was all too much to forget. I could see the regret in his eyes, but was that enough to undo the hurt? Asher's actions were deeply wrong. His blind trust in Rachel's lies, the public breakdown, and the emotional damage, those were not things that could be erased with a few heartfelt words. The trust we'd built over 3 years was broken in a single moment. However, it would be unfair to ignore the fact that he spent all night uncovering the truth and had taken responsibility for his part in everything that happened. His actions after the fact, though they didn't undo the damage, showed his genuine regret. The question remains, can someone who's hurt you so deeply ever truly make amends? What do you think? Can love and trust be rebuilt after something as devastating as this? Or is it a sign that it's time to move on? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you've ever been through something similar, share your experience. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more updates on how this story unfolds.
The phone felt wrong in my hands. Not my phone, his phone. The one Brandon thought he'd hidden so carefully beneath his car seat, wrapped in an old t-shirt like some precious artifact. Precious indeed. My thumb hovered over the screen, muscles twitching with the effort not to swipe. To maintain that last thread of trust, that final strand of ignorance that might save our marriage. I'm Emilia, and this moment would divide my life into before and after. The craft store where I worked part-time had closed early, a burst pipe flooding the back room. I'd driven to Brandon's office, thinking I'd surprise him, maybe suggest dinner at that Italian place he loved. His car sat empty in the parking lot, but his laptop bag was on the passenger seat. He always forgot something. That's when I saw it. The edge of fabric, too deliberately placed to be accidental. Now I stood in the empty lot, heart hammering against my ribs, while my sister's name blazed across the screen. Samantha, 10 missed calls, 23 unread messages. The most recent, meet me at our spot. We need to finalize everything. Our spot, their spot. My fingers moved without permission, opening the message thread. The words blurred, then sharpened with cruel clarity. I can't wait to start our life together. Just a few more weeks until we tell her. You're right. Emilia won't understand. She never could match your ambitions. The phone slipped from my numb fingers, clattering against the asphalt. I caught it before it could shatter, though part of me wanted to watch it break, to destroy this evidence of destruction. A car door slammed nearby. I looked up to see Brandon striding across the lot, his tie loosened, sleeves rolled up, in that casual way he thought made him look more approachable. He stopped dead when he saw me. What are you doing here? I held up the phone. Looking for you. Found something else instead. The color drained from his face, leaving him ashen under the fluorescent lights. I can explain. Explain what? How long you've been fucking my sister, or how you two plan to break it to me. He took a step forward, hands raised like he was approaching a wounded animal. It's not what you think. Samantha and I don't. The word cut through the air between us. Don't you dare say her name to me. We never meant to hurt you. A laugh bubbled up, bitter as bile. No? Then why hide the phone? Why all the secret meetings at your spot? His face hardened, that mask of contrition slipping to reveal something uglier beneath. You wouldn't understand. Samantha gets me, gets what I want from life, while you're content playing with glitter and glue at that pathetic little store. Content. The word tasted like ashes. I took that job so you could chase your precious career dreams. I supported you, believed in you, and I'm grateful, but grateful. I hurled the phone at his chest. He caught it reflexively, clutching it like the betrayal it represented. Show your gratitude by telling me how long. How long have you been planning to leave me for my own sister? Brandon's silence was answer enough. I turned away, my mind already racing ahead, calculating, planning. He called after me, but his words were lost in the roar of blood in my ears. I drove home on autopilot, my hands steady on the wheel even as my world imploded. In our driveway, I sat staring at our house, my house, with its perfectly trimmed lawn and cheerful window boxes, all facade, just like our marriage. My phone buzzed. Jordan, my best friend, checking in as she did most evenings. I let it ring, not ready to voice this betrayal aloud. Not yet. First, I needed to think, to plan. They wanted to destroy my life? Fine. But they'd learned that karma has a sister too, and her name is Revenge. Sunday dinner at the Carters had always been sacred. Now, watching Brandon pass the mashed potatoes to his mother with that practiced smile, I wondered how many of these dinners he'd sat through while planning to destroy everything. The garden looks lovely, Olivia, I said, cutting my roast into precise squares. Those new roses really brighten up the back fence. Oh, thank you, dear. Samantha actually suggested them. Olivia beamed. Speaking of, she sends her regrets. Something about a client emergency. My fork scraped against the plate. Henry, sitting at the head of the table, shot me a sharp look. He'd been a cop long enough to read tension in a room. Client emergency. The words tasted like poison. Funny how those keep happening on family nights. Brandon's knuckles whitened around his wine glass. What kind of emergency, Brandon? Maybe you know, since you two spend so much time together. The clatter of silverware stopped. Olivia's fork hung suspended between plate and mouth. her eyes darting between us. Henry set down his knife with deliberate care. "I don't know what you're implying," Brandon said, his voice steady but his jaw twitching. "Samantha and I occasionally consult on business matters." "Is that what you call it?" I pulled out his second phone, the one I'd kept after our parking lot confrontation, and placed it on the table. "Consulting?" Olivia gasped. "Brandon, what's going on?" "Nothing, Mom. Amelia's just upset about finding out my husband and sister are planning their future together." "You're right. I'm a bit upset about that." The silence that followed was absolute. Henry pushed back from the table, his chair scraping against hardwood. "Brandon, explain, now." "It's not what you think." Brandon stood, pacing like a caged animal. "Samantha understands me. She gets what I'm trying to build, my ambitions. While Amelia's content to waste her life in that craft store, that store paid our bills while you chased promotions. I cut in. While you spent money we didn't have on suits and watches to impress people who didn't care. I was building something." He slammed his hand on the table, making the dishes jump. "Something bigger than glitter and glue, and this small-town mentality. Samantha sees that. She believes in me." "Brandon Carter." Olivia's voice cracked like a whip. "Are you telling me you've been with your sister-in-law?" "It's complicated, Mom." "No," Henry said, his quiet tone more damning than any shout. "It's really not." Brandon turned to his father, desperation creeping into his voice. "Dad, you understand ambition. You always taught me to reach higher. I taught you about honor." Henry's face had hardened into the expression I imagined he'd used on criminals in his police days. "About loyalty, about being a man worth respecting. I am respecting myself, my dreams, my potential. By betraying your wife with her sister." Olivia's hands trembled as she folded her napkin. "The girl who sat at this table every Sunday for 8 years, who helped me through my surgery last spring." Brandon's facade cracked. For a moment, I saw uncertainty flicker across his face. Then his phone buzzed, his regular phone this time. He glanced at it, and something in his expression shifted. "I need to go." "Of course you do," I said. "She's calling, isn't she?" He didn't answer, just grabbed his jacket and headed for the door. Olivia called after him, but Henry caught her arm. "Let him go, Liv. He's made his choice." I stood, my legs surprisingly steady. "I should go too. Thank you for dinner." "Emilia." Henry's voice stopped me at the threshold. "Whatever you're planning, and I know you're planning something, remember who you are." I turned back, meeting his knowing gaze. "I'm remembering exactly who I am, and who they are." Outside, I watched Brandon's taillights disappear around the corner, probably heading to their special spot. My phone buzzed with a text from Jordan. "Did you do it?" "Yes," I typed back. Family dinner went exactly as expected. Time for phase 2. Because while Brandon was rushing to meet my sister, he had no idea I'd already met with his company's financial auditor, or that tomorrow, some very interesting documents would land on his boss's desk. Let them have their spot. I had bigger plans. Jordan's office always smelled like coffee and printer ink. Today, those familiar scents mixed with something else. Opportunity. She spread the financial documents across her desk, each page a nail in Brandon's coffin. "These aren't just expense reports," she said, tapping a highlighted column. "He's been moving company funds through shell accounts for months. Look at these transfers." I leaned closer, scanning the numbers. All to the same design firm, Samantha's firm, which doesn't actually exist. Jordan pulled up a website on her computer. Beautiful website though, very professional. But dig deeper, and there's nothing. No business license, no tax records, no actual clients besides your husband's company. My stomach clenched. She's been running a scam. Not her first either. Jordan opened another tab. "Remember when you mentioned she lived in Seattle for a year? I did some digging. Found 3 different interior design businesses registered under variations of her name. All dissolved after complaints of fraud. The pieces clicked together like a twisted puzzle. The expensive clothes, the constant business trips, The way she always seemed to have money, despite never having steady work. She's been playing this game for years. Jordan's journalist instincts were practically vibrating, and Brandon's just her latest mark. My phone buzzed, Henry calling. I ignored it. How much has Brandon given her? Nearly 200,000 over the past 8 months. The number hit me like a physical blow. All those times Brandon had insisted we couldn't afford to fix the roof, or replace my dying car, or start the family we'd once planned. There's more, Jordan said quietly. Look at these dates. I followed her finger across the spreadsheet. The first transfer was dated exactly 1 year ago, 3 months before I'd found the phone, before I knew about their affair. She targeted him, I whispered. This whole thing, she planned it from the start. Emilia. The office door burst open. Samantha stood there, designer handbag, clutched like a shield. Her perfect makeup not quite hiding her panic. What are you doing? She strode toward the desk, reaching for the papers. I snatched them away. Research, Jordan said coolly. Fascinating stuff about interior design fraud. Care to comment? This is family business. Samantha's voice shook slightly. You have no right. Family? I stood, forcing her to step back. Like when you had the right to seduce my husband, or steal his money. I love him, she insisted. You never understood him. What he needs. What he needs. I laughed. The sound sharp enough to make her flinch. Let me guess. Expensive gifts. Secret accounts. Just like David in Seattle. Or Michael in Portland. The color drained from her face. How did you... You're not as clever as you think, Sam. Did Brandon know about the others? About how this little game of yours usually ends? She recovered quickly, her lips curving into that familiar manipulative smile. You're just jealous. Brandon chose me because you're a better con artist than wife. I spread the documents between us. These numbers tell a different story. Wonder what Brandon will think when he sees them, or his company's board. You wouldn't dare, but uncertainty flickered in her eyes. It would destroy him. Like you planned to. I stepped closer, dropping my voice. I know about the account in your name. The one where you've been moving his money. Were you going to disappear with it, like you did to the others? Her mask cracked. For a moment, I saw the scared little girl who'd always competed with me. Always needed to take what was mine. I can explain everything to Brandon. Too late. I checked my phone. 3 missed calls from Henry now. The company's auditors already have copies. They're probably talking to him right now. As if on cue, her phone rang. Brandon's name flashed on the screen. She stared at it, paralyzed. Better answer that, Jordan said. Sounds important. Samantha backed toward the door, her carefully constructed world crumbling. This isn't over. Actually, I said, watching her retreat, I think it is. After she fled, Jordan touched my arm. You okay? I looked at the documents that would destroy my husband and sister. No, but I will be. My phone buzzed again. Henry. This time, I answered. It's done, he said without preamble. Brandon just confessed everything to the board. They're pressing charges. I closed my eyes, victory tasting both sweet and bitter. Good. Sometimes karma needs a little help. The craft store's bell chimed as Olivia walked in, looking out of place among the yarn displays and glitter aisles. She clutched her purse like armor, her wedding ring catching the fluorescent light as she approached my register. They've frozen his accounts, she said without preamble. All of them, even our joint family savings. I continued restocking the ribbon display, each spool clicking into place with mechanical precision. That tends to happen in fraud investigations. He's my son, Emilia. Her voice cracked. Whatever he's done, he's still my son. The purple ribbon slipped from my fingers, unspooling across the counter. And Samantha was my sister. Funny how family works. The police came to our house this morning. Olivia's hands trembled as she tried to help gather the ribbon. Henry couldn't even look at them. His old colleagues, asking questions about his own son. The weight of it hit me then. How many lives were unraveling because of my revenge? Not just Brandon and Samantha, but Henry's reputation in the department he'd served for 30 years. Olivia's standing in her church groups. The whispers that would follow them all. My phone buzzed. Jordan. Channel 5 breaking news about tech firm fraud. Running story at 6. I know what you did, Olivia said quietly. Henry told me about the evidence, how you gathered it, how you waited. Did he tell you everything? About the other women Samantha conned? The money Brandon stole? Yes, she met my eyes. And about how you made sure the story would break just before the company's merger announcement. Maximum damage. The ribbon tangled between us like a metaphor. They deserved it. Maybe. Olivia reached across the counter, her fingers cool against my wrist. But what about you, dear? What's all this doing to you? The question caught me off guard. I'd been so focused on destroying them, I hadn't noticed the cost to myself. The sleepless nights. The bitter taste that never quite left my mouth. The way I flinched every time my phone rang. I'm fine. No, you're not. She gestured around the store. You're hiding here, surrounding yourself with pretty things while you orchestrate destruction. That's not the Amelia I know. The Amelia you knew died when she found that phone. Did she, or is she just lost? Olivia pulled something from her purse. An old photo. Brandon and me on our wedding day. Samantha standing beside us, all of us laughing at some forgotten joke. Because the girl in this photo, she knew how to love without destroying. How to hurt without burning everything down. My chest tightened. That girl was naive. That girl was strong. Olivia's voice hardened. Stronger than this version, who thinks revenge will fill the holes they left. My phone buzzed again. Jordan. Brandon trying to reach you. Says it's urgent. They made their choices, I said. But the words felt hollow. Yes, they did. Olivia headed for the door, then paused. But you're making choices too, Emilia. And someday, when all this is over, you'll have to live with them. After she left, I stared at the tangled ribbon, purple as a bruise against the counter's white surface. My phone kept buzzing. Jordan, Henry, numbers I didn't recognize. Probably reporters, now that the story was breaking. I thought of Brandon's face at that family dinner, the moment his mask slipped. Of Samantha in Jordan's office, her carefully constructed world crumbling. Of Henry and Olivia, collateral damage in my quest for justice. The store's bell chimed again. I looked up, expecting another customer, but instead saw my own reflection in the darkening window. A stranger with hard eyes and tight lips, surrounded by crafting supplies meant to create beautiful things. When had I become someone who only knew how to destroy? My phone buzzed one final time. Brandon, please, I need to tell you something about Samantha, something you don't know. I let it ring, watching the ribbon unspool further across the counter, wondering if there was any way to gather up all these loose ends without getting more tangled in the process. The cafe where Samantha wanted to meet was exactly her style. Overpriced lattes and exposed brick walls. I arrived early, choosing a corner table where I could watch the door. Jordan sat at the counter, pretending to work on her laptop while actually recording everything. Samantha swept in 15 minutes late, designer sunglasses hiding what looked like sleepless nights. You're looking, well, amazing what a clear conscience does for the complexion. She slid into the seat across from me, removing her glasses. We need to talk about Brandon. Funny, he said the same thing about you. I pushed my untouched coffee aside, right before the police questioned him about the missing funds. You don't understand what you've done. Her perfectly manicured nails drummed against the table. The company's board, the investigation, you're destroying everything. Like you destroyed my marriage. That marriage was dead long before I came along. She leaned forward, voice dropping. Brandon was suffocating in this town, in that life you built around your little craft store dreams. I just showed him what he could become. A thief, an ambitious man with potential. Her lip curled. But you wouldn't understand that, would you? Always playing it safe, always so small. The barista dropped a mug somewhere behind us. The crash echoed like my racing heart. Small. I pulled out my phone, showing her the screen. Like these bank transfers? 200,000 is a pretty big number, Sam. Wonder what the police will think about where it all went. Color drained from her face. You wouldn't. Already did. The evidence is with the investigators. I smiled, the expression feeling foreign on my face. But that's not even the interesting part. Want to know what I found when I dug deeper? She stood abruptly, chair scraping against the floor. This conversation is over. Sit down. The steel in my voice surprised us both. Or I call the detective right now and tell him about Michael Porter and David Chen and all the others. Samantha sank back down, hands trembling slightly as she reached for her water. You see, I continued, Brandon wasn't special. He was just the latest in a long line of men you've conned. But you got sloppy this time, got personal, chose your own sister's husband. It wasn't like that. Then what was it like? I pushed my phone closer, showing her the evidence Jordan had gathered. Because from here, it looks like you've been running this same scam for years. Seduce, manipulate, embezzle, vanish. How many lives have you ruined, Sam? You don't know anything about my life. But her voice wavered. The things I've had to do. To survive? I laughed harshly. Save it for your lawyer. She reached across the table, grabbing my wrist. Amelia, please, if this gets out, I'll lose everything. Like I lost everything? I can make it right. Desperation crept into her tone. Brandon and we can give back the money. We'll leave town, never contact you again. My phone buzzed. Henry calling again. I ignored it. Too late. I stood, gathering my things. The police already have everything. And Brandon? I checked my watch. Should be in custody by now. You bitch. All pretense dropped from her face. You really think you've won? That destroying us will make you feel better? No. I looked down at her. This sister I'd once loved, now a stranger wearing familiar features. But watching you lose everything, that's a start. As I turned to leave, she called after me. He never loved you, you know, not really. You were just convenient. I paused at the door, not turning back. Maybe. But at least I never had to pretend to be someone else to get that love. Outside, Jordan fell into step beside me. Got it all recorded. You okay? I watched Samantha through the window, her head bowed over her phone, probably trying to warn Brandon too late. My phone buzzed again, this time with a news alert about arrests at Brandon's company. No, I said honestly, but I will be. The satisfaction felt hollow, like winning a game where everyone loses. But as police cars screamed past us toward the financial district, I realized there was no turning back now. The dominoes were falling. All I could do was watch. The police station's interview room smelled like stale coffee and desperation. Brandon sat across from me, orange jumpsuit, replacing his usual designer suits, dark circles under his eyes, making him look older than his 34 years. You won, he said flatly. Happy now? I studied the man I'd once loved, searching for any trace of the person I'd married. This isn't about winning. No? He leaned forward, chains rattling. Then why are you here? Come to watch me break? Through the observation window, I could sense Henry watching, his presence a silent weight. He'd pulled strings to arrange this meeting, though I wasn't sure why I'd agreed to come. Samantha's gone, I said. Disappeared right after your arrest. Funny how that works. Something cracked in Brandon's expression. She wouldn't. She did. Along with what was left in your accounts. I slid a bank statement across the table. She cleaned you out 3 hours before the police arrived, almost like she knew they were coming. His hand shook as he read the numbers. This isn't possible. We had plans. A future. Like we had plans. A future. That was different, but uncertainty crept into his voice. Samantha understood me, understood how to use you. I pulled out another document, evidence of Samantha's previous cons, just like she understood Michael Porter and David Chen and all the others. The color drained from his face. What are you talking about? You're perfect, Samantha. She's done this before, multiple times. Seduce, steal, Vanish. You weren't special, Brandon. Just convenient. He lunged across the table, hands reaching for me. The guard moved fast, but not before I saw something break behind Brandon's eyes. You're lying, he snarled as they restrained him. This is just more of your revenge. Ask your lawyer to look up Michael Porter's case. Or better yet, ask your father. He knew. Tried to warn you months ago. Brandon went still. Dad knew. He was a cop for 30 years. Did you think he wouldn't investigate the woman destroying his son's marriage? The fight drained from him suddenly, leaving him slumped in his chair. Why are you telling me this? Because you deserve to know what you threw everything away for. I stood, gathering my things. And because now, you know exactly how it feels to be betrayed by someone you trusted. Emilia, wait. His voice cracked. Please, I need your help. The company's pressing charges. I'm looking at serious time. Should have thought of that before you stole from them. For her, he laughed bitterly. All of it was for her. The money, the lies, betraying you. I did it all because I thought she loved me. Something tight in my chest finally unraveled. That's the difference between us, Brandon. I never needed someone else's love to know my worth. As I turned to leave, he called out one last time. I'm sorry for everything. I know it doesn't matter now, but you're right. I paused at the door. It doesn't. Henry was waiting in the hallway, his face grim. You okay? No. I leaned against the wall, suddenly exhausted. None of this feels like victory. Revenge rarely does. My phone buzzed, Jordan calling. Probably with news about Samantha's trail going cold. Another dead end in this mess I'd created. I destroyed him, I whispered. Destroyed our whole family. And for what? It doesn't fix anything. Henry touched my shoulder. Sometimes things need to break completely before they can heal right. Through the window, I watched Brandon being led away. Shoulders bowed under the weight of his choices. In his defeated posture, I saw my own reflection, both of us trapped in cycles of destruction we'd created. Come on, Henry said gently. Olivia's waiting. Family dinner tonight. Family? I laughed hollowly. What's left of it? More than you think. He guided me toward the exit. And maybe that's the real victory here. Finding out what remains after everything burns down. Outside, rain fell softly, washing away another layer of who I used to be. I wondered if, somewhere in all this wreckage, I could find pieces worth salvaging, of myself, of family, of hope. But first, I had to face what I'd become in pursuit of justice. Jordan burst into my craft store, face flushed with urgency. She's back. Samantha's at your house. My scissors clattered against the counter. What? Police tracked her card usage. She came back to clear out the safe in your basement. Jordan grabbed my arm. Henry's already on his way. The drive home was a blur of red lights and racing thoughts. My house came into view. Our house, where Brandon and I had once planned a future. Samantha's sleek car sat in the driveway, looking exactly like the expensive lie it was. I found her in the master bedroom, methodically emptying drawers. She didn't even turn around. Took you long enough, she said, tossing another handful of jewelry into her bag. Though I suppose you've always been slow to catch on. Step away from the safe, Sam. She finally faced me, and I barely recognized her. Gone was the polished exterior, replaced by something harder, desperate. Or what? You'll call the police? They're already coming, aren't they? Why did you come back? Because this was mine first. She gestured around the room. All of it. The life, the status, the future. I was always meant for more than you. So you took everything I had? You had everything I wanted. The words exploded from her. The perfect marriage, the loving family, the simple little life that somehow made you happy. Do you know how infuriating that was, watching my little sister be content with mediocrity? Sirens wailed in the distance. Her eyes darted to the window. They're not just coming for the money, I said quietly. They know about the others, all of them. Something dangerous flickered across her face. You think you've won. That exposing me somehow makes you better. She reached into her bag. I'm not going to prison. The gun looked wrong in her manicured hands. My heart hammered, but my voice remained steady. This isn't you, Sam. You don't know who I am. The weapon shook slightly. You never did. None of you did. I know you're scared. That you've been running so long, you've forgotten how to stop. Shut up! She stepped closer, gun leveled at my chest. You don't get to analyze me, not after what you did. What I did, I laughed, the sound harsh in the tense air. I learned from the best, sister. You taught me how to destroy someone's life. I just turned out to be a better student than you expected. The sirens grew closer, sweat beaded on her forehead. You know what's funny? I took a step forward. I won. Even with the gun, even with everything you've stolen, I still won. Because tomorrow you'll still be running. Still pretending. Still empty. I said, shut up. Her finger tightened on the trigger. The bedroom door burst open. Henry stood there, his service weapon drawn. Drop it, Samantha. She spun toward him, and I moved. The gun clattered across the floor as we both went down. She fought like a cornered animal, all nails and fury. But years of craft store inventory had made me stronger than she expected. I hate you, she sobbed as Henry pulled her away. I hate that you're better than me. I'm not better. I watched as officers cuffed her. I just finally stopped trying to be you. Later, sitting on my front steps with Jordan, I watched them load Samantha into a police car. Henry approached, holding a familiar object. Found this in her bag. He handed me my mother's wedding ring, the one thing of value I'd thought permanently lost. Thought you might want it back. I turned the ring over in my hands, remembering how proud Mom had been to pass it down. How devastated she'd have been to see what her daughters became. What happens now? Jordan asked softly. Through the police car window, I caught Samantha's eye one last time. In her defeated expression, I saw a mirror of my own vengeful path, and suddenly knew what I had to do next. Now, I slipped the ring into my pocket. Now I stopped letting the past define my future. The police car pulled away, taking with it the last pieces of who we used to be. Tomorrow would bring Brandon's sentencing, more family fallout, more wounds to heal. But for now, I sat between my best friend and my father-in-law, watching the sun set on the battlefield of what once was home. The realtor's sold sign lay flat in our front yard, knocked down by last night's storm. I picked it up, brushing off wet leaves before replanting it firmly in the soil. Behind me, the moving truck waited, already loaded with what remained of my old life. Henry appeared at my side, carrying the last box from the garage. Found these in the corner, mostly photo albums. Burned them, Emilia. His voice carried that familiar weight of wisdom. Some memories are worth keeping, even the painful ones. Inside, Olivia wrapped cups in newspaper, her methodical movements masking deeper tremors. The kitchen where we'd shared so many family dinners now echoed with emptiness. Brandon's sentencing is tomorrow, she said, not looking up. 5 years, with possibility of parole. And Samantha? 7, no parole. Henry set the box down. Plus, restitution to her other victims. Jordan breezed in through the back door, carrying coffee for everyone. The story's running tomorrow, front page. Guess I'll be famous, I said dryly. You're already famous at the craft store, Jordan grinned. 3 new classes added since you became owner. That had been unexpected. My boss retiring, offering to sell me the store. Even more unexpected was discovering I had the strength to say yes, to build something from the ashes of destruction. Found it, Olivia called, pulling something from a drawer. My mother's recipe box, its corners worn smooth from years of use. You should have this. I can't. Yes, you can. She pressed it into my hands. Family isn't just about blood, dear. It's about who stays when the storm hits. The box felt heavy with more than just recipes. I opened it, finding a familiar card tucked inside. My wedding invitation, preserved like a pressed flower. I saved it, Olivia said softly, to remind myself that beautiful beginnings don't guarantee beautiful endings. But ugly endings don't erase the beauty that came before. Through the window, I watched the morning sun illuminate my garden. The roses I'd planted after finding Brandon's phone had bloomed, their thorny stems stronger for surviving winter's frost. "You never told me," I said to Henry, "about warning Brandon about Samantha." He sighed, age lines deepening around his eyes. "Would it have changed anything?" "No, but I wish I'd known I wasn't alone in seeing through her." "You were never alone." Jordan squeezed my shoulder. "You just needed to remember who you were without them." The moving truck's horn honked. Time to go. We did one final walk through, our footsteps echoing through empty rooms that once held so many dreams. In the master bedroom, I paused at the wall where Brandon and I had marked our height changes over the years. The pencil marks told a story of growth neither of us had noticed happening. "Ready?" Henry asked from the doorway. I traced the highest mark, dated just weeks before finding the phone. "I thought revenge would feel better than this." "Revenge is easy," he said. "Healing is harder." "But worth it," Olivia added, appearing beside him. Outside, I locked the door one last time. The key felt different now, no longer a symbol of what I'd lost, but of what I'd chosen to leave behind. Jordan waited in her car, ready to follow the moving truck to my new place. Henry and Olivia stood by their vehicle, no longer my in-laws, but something more genuine. Family by choice, rather than law. "You know," Olivia said, hugging me goodbye, "sometimes the best revenge is simply living well." I thought of Brandon in his cell, of Samantha facing her consequences, of all the carefully constructed lies they'd built and lost. Their choices had shaped my path, but they no longer defined my destination. The morning sun caught my mother's ring, now worn on my right hand, a reminder that legacy is what we choose to carry forward, not what weighs us down. "Living well," I echoed, climbing into my car. "I can do that." Behind me, the house stood silent, holding its secrets and scars. Ahead, the road stretched toward something new. Not a happy ending, perhaps, but an honest beginning. And sometimes that's enough.
The smell of fresh coffee couldn't mask the stench of their betrayal. I stood frozen in my own kitchen doorway, watching my husband Mark and his family hunched over blueprints spread across our dining table. They hadn't noticed me yet, too absorbed in their grand plans for my father's land. "The parking structure could easily fit 300 spaces," Travis said, jabbing his finger at the paper. "Conservative estimate puts revenue at 6 figures annually." My father wasn't even cold in his grave. "Lydia will come around." My mother-in-law Patricia's voice dripped with false sweetness. "Once she sees how much sense it makes financially." I gripped my car keys until they bit into my palm. Mark nodded along with them, like the puppet he'd always been. 12 years of marriage, and I'd never seen him so clearly as I did in that moment. "The environmental survey might be an issue," Mark said, running his hand through his hair. His tell when he's nervous. Harold was particular about preservation. "Your father-in-law is dead, Mark." Patricia's words cut through the air. "It's time to think about the living." The living, like vultures circling a carcass. I let my keys drop onto the counter with a clatter. 3 heads snapped up in perfect synchronization. If I wasn't so angry, I might have laughed. "Lydia." Mark straightened, trying to gather the papers. "You're home early." "Clearly." I walked to the table, each step measured. "Don't stop on my account. I'm fascinated by how you're planning to carve up my inheritance." Travis had the decency to look uncomfortable. Patricia didn't bother hiding her ambition behind a mask of shame. "We were going to discuss this with you, dear. Over dinner tonight." How thoughtful. I picked up one of the drawings. Neat lines and numbers replaced the wildflowers and oak trees my father had protected for decades. "And when exactly did you start planning this? Before or after the funeral?" "Now, Lydia." Mark stepped toward me, hands raised like he was approaching a wild animal. "This could be good for everyone. Your father's land has been sitting unused." "Unused?" The word tasted like poison. That land is home to 3 endangered species. Dad spent his life protecting it. But I suppose you knew that when you married me, didn't you, Mark? Playing the long game? Patricia's perfectly lined lips thinned. Don't be dramatic. We're trying to help you make sensible decisions during a difficult time. I looked at each of them in turn. My brother-in-law with his desperate ambition, my mother-in-law with her calculating eyes, and my husband with his weak excuses. The betrayal settled into my bones like ice. Get out. My voice was steady, surprising even me. All of you. Lydia. Mark started. I said, get out. I slammed my hand on the table, sending coffee cups rattling. And take your vulture convention with you. They gathered their papers in tense silence. Patricia paused at the door, her designer purse clutched like a shield. You're being unreasonable. Think about Mark's position in the family. I smiled, and it felt like breaking glass. Oh, I am thinking about positions, Patricia. More than you know. After they left, I stood in my empty kitchen, my father's voice echoing in my memory. Sometimes, Butterfly, the people closest to us cast the longest shadows. I pulled out my phone and dialed my father's lawyer. Mr. Phillips, it's Lydia Bennett. We need to talk about my father's will. Immediately. The game they wanted to play? Fine. But they'd forgotten one crucial detail. I was Harold Thompson's daughter, and he taught me more than just how to preserve wildflowers. Mr. Phillips's office hadn't changed in 20 years. Same leather chairs, same dusty law books, same faint smell of pipe tobacco, though he'd quit long before I was born. The familiarity should have been comforting. It wasn't. Your father was very specific about the land's future, he said, sliding a thick manila envelope across his desk. The will is ironclad. I traced my finger along the envelope's edge. They'll fight it. The Bennetts? He removed his reading glasses, polishing them with deliberate care. They already have. Patricia called this morning, suggesting your father wasn't of sound mind when he made his final arrangements. The rage I'd been containing since yesterday sparked again. Of course she did. She also mentioned your emotional state, suggested you might need help managing the inheritance. I barked out a laugh that held no humor. Let me guess, she volunteered? Along with Travis as co-executor. He replaced his glasses, fixing me with a steady gaze. Your father anticipated this, Lydia. Open the envelope. Inside was a stack of documents, but what caught my eye was a handwritten letter in Dad's familiar scrawl. My throat tightened as I unfolded it. The office door opened before I could read it. Mark stood there, looking uncomfortable in his pressed suit and tie. Sorry I'm late. You weren't invited. The words came out sharper than I intended. Or maybe exactly as sharp as I intended. I'm still your husband. He closed the door, taking the seat beside me. We need to discuss this as a family. Like you discussed the parking lot plans with me? Mr. Phillips cleared his throat. Perhaps I should give you two a moment. No. I straightened in my chair. Mark can hear this with everyone else at the official reading. Unless he'd like to explain why his signature is on development proposals dated 3 months ago? Mark's face paled. How did you... Your brother talks too much when he's excited. I turned back to the lawyer. When can we schedule the reading? Thursday at 2. I'll notify all parties. He hesitated. Lydia, your father also left something in the safe. For your eyes only. Mark shifted beside me. As her husband? For her eyes only, Mr. Phillips repeated firmly, standing to enter the combination on a wall safe I'd never noticed before. He retrieved a small wooden box, weathered and familiar. Dad's treasure box, he'd called it. The sight of it knocked the wind from my lungs. I'll need a moment, I managed to say. Mark touched my arm. Lydia. I jerked away. Alone. After they left, I opened the box with trembling hands. Inside lay a stack of photographs. The land through the seasons, wildflowers in bloom, deer at dawn. Beneath them, a USB drive and another letter. My Butterfly. If you're reading this, they've already shown their cards. The drive contains everything you need. Proof of Patricia's gambling debts, Travis's failed ventures, the money they've borrowed against properties they don't own. Your mother always said I was too trusting. I wasn't. I was waiting. Remember what I taught you about chess? Sometimes you have to sacrifice a piece to win the game. All my love, Dad. I pressed the letter to my chest, a laugh bubbling up that might have been a sob. Even from the grave, he was protecting me. Protected me by arming me with exactly what I needed. When I emerged from the office, Mark was pacing the hallway. We need to talk about this. No. I walked past him, clutching the box. We needed to talk 3 months ago when you first signed those papers. We needed to talk last week when your mother started calling real estate developers. We needed to talk yesterday, before I found you all plotting over my father's legacy like vultures. It's not like that. It's exactly like that. I stopped at the elevator, finally meeting his eyes. You know what the worst part is, Mark? Dad saw it coming. He knew what your family would do, probably before I even married you. And he made sure I'd be ready. The elevator doors opened. As I stepped in, I saw Mark's reflection in the polished metal. Lost, confused, and for the first time afraid. Good. He should be. Because this wasn't just about protecting the land anymore. This was about justice. And I was just getting started. Patricia's dining room felt like a stage set. Everything arranged for maximum dramatic effect. Crystal glasses caught the chandelier light, white linen napkins folded into perfect triangles. A performance of family unity, directed by the matriarch herself. I pushed my untouched salmon around the plate, listening to Travis hold court at the head of the table. The investors are practically begging to get in on this, he said, gesturing with his wine glass. We're talking serious money here, life-changing money. How fascinating. I speared a piece of asparagus. And how many investors have actually signed on? Travis's smile flickered. Well, we're in preliminary discussions, which means none. I set down my fork. Just like your tech startup last year. Or was it the cryptocurrency venture? Patricia cleared her throat. Lydia, dear, this negativity isn't helpful. We're trying to have a nice family dinner. Are we? I looked around the table. Because it sounds like another sales pitch for destroying my father's legacy. Mark's hand found my knee under the table. A warning squeeze. I shrugged it off. Your father would have wanted you to be practical, Patricia said, dabbing her lips with her napkin. The property taxes alone will be covered by the trust he set up. I smiled thinly. But you knew that already, didn't you? Since you've been calling his accountant. The silence that followed was delicious. Patricia's face tightened like she'd bitten into something sour. Mark, she said finally, perhaps you should explain to your wife about family loyalty. Don't. The word came out like a whip crack. Don't you dare use him as your puppet again. Lydia. Mark started. No, let's talk about family loyalty. I pulled out my phone, scrolling through the files I'd found on Dad's USB drive. Like the loyalty that made you cover Patricia's gambling debts 3 times in the last 5 years? Or the loyalty that had you sign personal guarantees for Travis's failed ventures? Travis's face went red. That's private family business. It became my business when you decided to steal my inheritance to fix your mistakes. I turned to Mark. Did you know about the second mortgage on our house? The one your mother convinced you to sign for last month? Mark's confusion wasn't feigned. What second mortgage? Show him the papers, Patricia. When she didn't move, I pulled out copies and slid them across the table. Your signature's a decent forgery, honey, but not perfect. The color drained from Mark's face as he read. Patricia set down her wine glass with a sharp click. Everything I've done has been for this family, she said. Sometimes difficult decisions. Save it. I stood up, my chair scraping against the hardwood. The will reading is Thursday. I suggest you all be there. Especially you, Mark. You'll want to hear exactly what my father knew about your family's difficult decisions. Sit down, Patricia snapped. We're not finished. Oh, but we are. I dropped my napkin onto my plate. By the way, Those investors Travis mentioned? They pulled out this morning. Seems someone sent them proof of his previous bankruptcies. Anonymous source, of course. Travis knocked over his wine glass, red spreading across the white tablecloth like blood. You vindictive bit. Travis! Patricia's voice could have frozen hell. I was already walking away when Mark caught up to me in the foyer. Lydia, wait. Please, we can talk about this. I turned to face him. Really looked at him. This man I'd loved for 12 years, who'd let his family poison everything we'd built. You know what hurts the most? My voice was steady, even as tears threatened. Dad tried to warn me about them years ago, but I defended you. Told him you were different, that you'd choose me when it mattered. I opened the front door. Guess we were both wrong. Where are you going? Home, to pack. I didn't look back. You can stay here with your real family. The papers will be ready to sign on Thursday. The door closed behind me with a final sounding click. In my car, I pulled out Dad's letter again, running my fingers over his familiar handwriting. Remember, Butterfly? Sometimes the biggest betrayals come wrapped in the prettiest packages. I started the engine, Patricia's perfectly arranged dinner party falling away in my rearview mirror. Dad had given me everything I needed to bring them down. Now it was time to use it. The key stuck in the lock of Dad's front door. It always had. One firm bump with my hip, and I was inside the empty house, surrounded by echoes of his life. Family photos on the walls, his reading glasses still on the side table, the scent of pipe tobacco that never quite faded. I'd been avoiding this place since the funeral. Now I had no choice. My phone buzzed. Another message from Mark. 14 since last night's dinner disaster. I silenced it without reading. The study was exactly as Dad left it. Organized chaos that only he understood. I started with the filing cabinet, searching for anything that might help me understand the extent of the Bennett schemes. Third drawer down, I found it. A folder labeled Patricia. You shouldn't be here. I spun around. Mark stood in the doorway, still in his work clothes. He must have followed me. Neither should you. I clutched the folder tighter. How did you get in? I still have the spare key, from when we used to check on him. He stepped into the room, eyes landing on the folder. What are you looking for? The truth. For once. I opened the folder, spreading documents across Dad's desk. Like why your mother's been making monthly payments to someone named James Carlton for the past year. Mark's face changed. Just slightly, but enough. You don't want to go down this road. Why? Because I might find out what really happened to the environmental survey? The one that mysteriously changed its findings right after these payments started? He reached for the papers. I pulled them back. Don't. My voice cracked. Don't make this worse. I'm trying to protect you. Protect me? I laughed, the sound harsh in the quiet room. By helping them steal everything my father worked for? You don't understand. Then make me understand. I slammed my hand on the desk. Tell me why you're choosing them over me. Over us. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. Finally, Mark sank into Dad's leather chair, suddenly looking old. They're broke, he said quietly. All of them. Mom's gambling debts, Travis's failed businesses. They're about to lose everything. This land, it's their last chance. And that justifies fraud? No, but... He ran a hand through his hair. Mom said it would be clean. Just a simple development deal. Nobody getting hurt. I pulled out another document from the folder. Tell that to James Carlton, the environmental inspector your mother's been bribing. He was Dad's friend. 20 years on the preservation board together. Mark's head snapped up. What? Dad knew Mark. He knew everything. I spread out more papers, bank statements, emails, photographs. He documented all of it. Every bribe, every forged document, every backroom deal. He was building a case. Against my family? Against anyone who tried to destroy his life's work. I touched a photo of Dad and me on his desk, taken on the land we were fighting over. Including his own daughter's husband, apparently. Mark stood, reaching for me. Lydia. The front door slammed. Heavy footsteps in the hallway. In here, Mark called out before I could stop him. Travis appeared in the doorway, followed by Patricia. Their presence felt like a violation. Well, Patricia said, eyeing the scattered documents. I see we're all having a family meeting. Get out. My voice was ice. All of you. We can't do that, dear. Patricia's smile didn't reach her eyes. Not when you're clearly planning to cause trouble with private family matters. Private? I held up the Carlton file. Should we ask the ethics board how private this is? Travis stepped forward, but Patricia raised a hand to stop him. Think carefully about your next move, Lydia. Family loyalty works both ways. It would be a shame if Mark had to choose sides. I looked at my husband, waiting for him to defend me. He stared at the floor. He already has. I gathered the documents, my hands steady despite everything. Thursday's will reading just got more interesting. As I walked out, I heard Patricia say something about damage control. But it was Mark's silence that followed me, heavy as a funeral bell. Dad's final letter burned in my pocket. Remember, Butterfly, when you're ready to strike, make sure you have all your weapons ready. I did now. And Thursday couldn't come soon enough. The construction equipment arrived at dawn. I watched from my car as yellow machines crawled across Dad's land like insects, their diesel engines shattering the morning quiet. Travis stood among them, gesturing with a rolled-up set of plans, playing developer. My phone lit up. Mark again. Please come home. We can fix this. I turned off the phone and pulled out the USB drive. One file remained unopened, a video dated 3 days before Dad died. My hands shook as I connected it to my laptop. Dad's face filled the screen, gaunt but determined. Butterfly, if you're watching this, they've started moving equipment onto the land. Patricia always was impatient. He coughed, then continued. There's something I never told you about the trust. Something that changes everything. A tap on my window made me jump. James Carlton stood there, the corrupted environmental inspector, looking nothing like his confident photos in Dad's files. I got out, keeping the car between us. Brave of you to show your face. I needed to warn you. He glanced nervously at the construction site. Patricia Bennett, she's not just planning a parking lot. The environmental survey I falsified? It wasn't about the endangered species, it was about what's under the land. What are you talking about? Mineral rights. Your father discovered a car door slammed nearby. Carlton flinched and backed away. Just check the geological surveys from 1985, before they disappear too. He hurried off as Patricia's Mercedes pulled up. She emerged looking immaculate as always, but something was different. An edge of desperation in her eyes. Lovely morning for a chat with disgraced officials, isn't it? She joined me at the fence line. Though I suppose James has nothing left to lose now. Unlike some of us. What's under the land, Patricia? She didn't flinch. Progress, opportunity, a future for this family if you'd just stop fighting us. It's not your family's future to take. No? She turned to face me fully. Tell me, dear, how do you think your father afforded to maintain this property all these years? Those conservation grants barely covered taxes. The implication hit like a physical blow. You're lying. Am I? Ask yourself why he never developed this land, despite numerous offers. Why he was so obsessed with keeping people off it. She smiled thinly. Your father had secrets too, Lydia. Dark ones. The kind that destroy legacies. Get out. My voice shook with rage. Get your equipment and get out or I'll... You'll what? Expose us all? She laughed softly. Oh, my dear. You really should watch that video to the end. She walked away, leaving me with the laptop screen still frozen on Dad's face. Behind me, the machines continued their invasion, tearing into the earth like wounds. I forced myself to press play again. The trust has a condition, Dad continued on screen. One I never told anyone. If the land is developed within 20 years of my death, everything goes to the Bennett family. I had to protect Had to make sure. He started coughing again, harder this time. The video ended there. My phone buzzed again. A text from Mark. Mom told me about the trust condition. I'm so sorry. Please let me explain. The machines growled louder. Travis was directing them toward the old oak grove, Dad's favorite spot. Each bite of their metal teeth felt like they were tearing into me instead of the earth. I opened Dad's final letter again, searching for guidance, for any hint he'd prepared me for this. The words blurred through my tears. Sometimes the biggest betrayals come wrapped in the prettiest packages. But which betrayal? Patricia's schemes? Mark's weakness? Or something darker, buried in the land itself? The oak trees started falling, their ancient trunks crashing to earth like thunder. And with them fell my last illusions about simple revenge or justice. This wasn't just about saving Dad's legacy anymore. This was about uncovering the truth, no matter how ugly it might be. I started the car. I had until tomorrow's will reading to find those 1985 surveys. To understand what Dad had really been protecting or hiding all these years. The machines kept eating the earth behind me, hungry for whatever secrets lay beneath. The 1985 geological survey lay on Mr. Phillips' conference table like a bomb waiting to detonate. Around it sat the Bennett family. Patricia perfectly poised, Travis fidgeting, Mark pale and drawn. The will reading would start in 10 minutes. Rare earth elements, I said, breaking the silence. That's what's under the land. That's what this has all been about. Patricia didn't blink. Your father knew. All those years preaching conservation, he was sitting on a fortune. And you knew too. That's why you pushed Mark to marry me. The words tasted like ash. A decade-long con. Marriage of convenience? Travis smirked. Welcome to the family business. Mark stood abruptly, knocking his chair back. I never knew. Sit down, Mark. Patricia's voice could have frozen hell. You've done enough damage. I spread out more documents across the table. Dad's trust condition wasn't about protecting the land. It was about exposing you. All of you. I turned to Mark. Including my loving husband. Lydia, please. The trust transfers everything to the Bennetts if development starts within 20 years, I continued. But it also triggers an automatic audit of everything, including those shell companies you've been using to hide Patricia's gambling debts. Travis's smirk vanished. Patricia's mask cracked just slightly. You really think you can threaten us? She reached into her bag, pulled out a folder. Your father's hands weren't clean either. These documents prove he knew about the minerals for years. Took payments to keep quiet. More forgeries? Ask James Carlton. Oh wait, you can't. He had an unfortunate accident this morning. Car brake failure. The room tilted. Carlton's warning cut short. Another piece of Dad's legacy, erased. Mr. Phillips entered, carrying the official will documents. Before he could speak, the conference room door burst open. 2 federal agents stepped in, badges out. Patricia Bennett? Travis Bennett? You're under investigation for fraud, conspiracy, and in connection with the death of James Carlton. What? Travis jumped up. Lydia, what did you do? I hadn't done anything. This wasn't part of my plan. Patricia stood slowly, smoothing her skirt. Well played, Harold, she murmured. Then louder, I invoke my right to counsel. As the agents read their rights, Mark grabbed my arm. Tell me you didn't know about Carlton. I pulled away. Like you didn't know about the mineral rights? I loved you, he whispered. That part was real. Was it? Or was that just another pretty package hiding a betrayal? The agents led Patricia and Travis out. Mark followed, pausing at the door. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. Me too. I watched him go, feeling nothing but hollow. Mr. Phillips cleared his throat. There's one more document. Your father left strict instructions to be opened only after everything else came to light. He handed me a sealed envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper, Dad's handwriting shaky but clear. My butterfly, by now you know the truth. About the land, about the Bennets, about me. The minerals were my curse, my secret shame. I took their money, convinced myself it was for the greater good. But the guilt ate at me until I couldn't bear it. I'm sorry for putting you through this. Sorry for not trusting you with the truth sooner. The trust condition wasn't just about exposing them. It was about forcing me to face my own sins. The land is yours now. Truly yours, free of all our shadows. Plant something beautiful where we buried our secrets. All my love, Dad. The paper blurred. All my carefully planned revenge, my righteous anger, and in the end, there were no heroes. Just broken people, buried secrets, and a piece of land that had poisoned us all. Outside the window, I could see the construction equipment, still waiting to tear up the earth, to expose everything we'd tried to hide. The question was, what would grow from the ashes of all we'd destroyed? The construction site looked like an open wound in the morning light. Yellow machines stood frozen, their work halted by federal tape and uniformed officers. I walked past them, Dad's final letter burning in my pocket, toward the gathering crowd. Patricia stood with her lawyer, still elegant despite everything. Travis paced nearby, shooting venomous glances at Mark, who stood apart from them all. Mrs. Bennet. Dr. Chen from the Environmental Protection Agency stepped forward. We're ready to begin the inspection. Patricia's lawyer intervened. My client maintains all proper procedures were followed. Like James Carlton's proper procedures? I pulled out my phone, played the recording Carlton had secretly made the day before his death. Patricia's voice filled the air, discussing payoffs and cover-ups. That's inadmissible, the lawyer started. In court, maybe. I nodded toward the EPA team. But they can still inspect every inch of this land, every sample, every test Carlton falsified. Unless what? Travis snapped. I pulled out another document. Sign over your development rights. All of them. The land goes into a conservation trust. Permanently. Or what? Patricia's mask finally cracked. You'll destroy us? Like your father tried to? No. I moved closer, voice low. I'll let you destroy yourselves. The federal investigation, the environmental violations, Carlton's death, it'll all come out. Every dirty secret, every betrayal. Is that what you want? You self-righteous little... Travis started forward, but Mark caught his arm. Enough. Mark's voice was steady. Sign it, Mom. Patricia turned on him, snake quick. After everything I've done for you? You mean to me. He moved to stand beside me. Sign it, or I'll testify about everything, including what really happened to Carlton. The silence stretched tight as a wire. Then Patricia laughed, a hollow, broken sound. You really are Harold's daughter. She snatched the document, scrawled her signature. There, you've won. Happy? This was never about winning. I handed the paper to Dr. Chen. It was about truth, all of it. As if on cue, the EPA team began their work, marking areas for testing. Patricia's lawyer led her away, already discussing damage control. Travis followed, defeated. Mark stayed. I knew, he said quietly. Not everything. Not at first, but I knew enough. Should have chosen you sooner. Why didn't you? Same reason your father kept his secrets. Sometimes the truth feels more dangerous than lies. I touched the earth, feeling its warmth. Somewhere beneath us lay the minerals that had poisoned so many lives. But above them... Help me with something? I pulled a seedling from my bag, an oak sapling from Dad's greenhouse. Mark watched as I began digging. Your father's favorite, he said softly. He left instructions. Plant something beautiful where we buried our secrets. I placed the seedling in the hole. Want to help? Together, we covered its roots with soil. Behind us, the EPA teams worked, uncovering truth after buried truth. But here, in this small patch of earth, we were planting something new. What happens now? Mark asked. I watched the sapling sway in the breeze. The land goes into trust. The investigation continues, and we... And we? We learned to grow something honest from all these lies. I stood, dusting off my hands. It won't be easy. Nothing worth doing ever is. He echoed Dad's favorite phrase, and for the first time in weeks, I felt something like hope. The morning sun caught the sapling's leaves, making them glow like emeralds. Somewhere, I thought I could hear Dad laughing. Not at our pain or our mistakes, but at the simple truth we'd all forgotten. That even poisoned earth can nurture new life if you're brave enough to plant it. I took Mark's hand, and together we walked away from the machines, the investigators, and all our buried secrets. Behind us, the little oak tree reached for the sky, its roots already growing deep into the earth we'd fought so hard to save. The oak sapling had grown 3 inches when Patricia's sentencing came down. I sat in the courtroom's back row, watching her maintain perfect posture as the judge detailed her crimes. Travis had already taken his plea deal, turning state's evidence against their other conspirators. Mark squeezed my hand as his mother was led away. Neither of us spoke. Some wounds needed silence to heal. Outside, autumn painted the courthouse steps in gold and red. A reporter approached, notebook ready, but Mark stepped between us. No comment. Mrs. Bennett? She persisted. Any response to the EPA's findings about the rare earth deposits? I paused. Plant a tree. See what grows. We left her puzzling over that, walking to where Mr. Phillips waited with the final paperwork. The land transfer to the Conservation Trust would be complete by sunset. Your father would be proud, he said, holding out his pen. Would he? I thought of his final confession, the guilt he'd carried, the secrets he'd buried beneath all that protected land, but also the legacy he'd left. Not just the earth itself, but the truth he'd forced us all to face. One last thing. Mr. Phillips produced a small package. Found this while clearing your father's office. It was marked for after the truth comes out. Inside lay a single butterfly chrysalis in a small glass case and a note. My butterfly. By the time you read this, you'll understand why I named you that. Not for your beauty or delicacy, but for your capacity to transform. To emerge stronger from whatever cocoon life wraps you in. The land was my chrysalis, my shell of secrets and shame. But you've broken free of it. Made something better from my mistakes. The minerals will stay buried. Let them. Some treasures are worth more underground, feeding roots that reach for the sky. All my love, Dad. I handed the note to Mark. He read it silently, then looked at the chrysalis. It's still alive. It's waiting. I signed the trust documents, feeling something settle in my chest. Like we all were. The drive to the land took us past Patricia's empty house, its windows dark. Travis's car was gone from the driveway, probably sold to pay legal fees. The family that had schemed for so long to possess everything was left with nothing but consequences. But revenge tasted different than I'd expected. Not sweet, not bitter, just real, like fresh earth after rain. We parked by the oak sapling. Other seedlings had joined it now, planted by local conservation volunteers. The construction equipment scars were healing, covered by new growth. I've been thinking, Mark said, touching a leaf, about what your father wrote, about transforming. And maybe we all were chrysalises, Mom, Travis, me, all wrapped up in lies we thought would protect us. He looked at me, but only some of us chose to break free. I took out the glass case, studying the chrysalis inside. Its dark shell had begun to turn transparent, revealing hints of wing patterns beneath. We should release it here, I said, when it's ready. How will we know when? I thought of Dad's words about truth and transformation, about secrets buried and revelations unearthed, about the choice between staying wrapped in comfortable lies or fighting free into uncertain light. We'll know. I placed the case gently between the saplings. Some things have to happen in their own time. Mark's hand found mine again. Behind us, the sun painted long shadows across the land. Not the darkness of secrets anymore, but the simple shade of growing things reaching toward light. The chrysalis waited, neither past nor future, but perfectly present. Like the minerals beneath our feet, like the truth we'd fought so hard to uncover, like the love that had survived betrayal's bitter season. Some transformations couldn't be rushed. Some revenges looked like redemption in the end. I leaned against Mark, feeling the wind move through the young trees. Dad's voice whispered in their leaves. Plant something beautiful where we buried our secrets. We had, and now we would watch it grow.
The wine glass shattered against the wall, red droplets spraying across the cream wallpaper like arterial blood. My hand still tingled from the force of throwing it, but the satisfaction was worth every crystal shard now littering our dining room floor. I'm Joe, and this is how I finally stopped pretending my marriage wasn't a carefully constructed lie. You're acting like a child, Travis said, his voice dripping with that condescending tone he'd perfected over our 12 years together. This is exactly why you'll never advance beyond Daddy's little project manager. Our son Ollie pressed himself deeper into my father's side, his small fingers clutching Papa Rick's suit jacket. The tension in the room was thick enough to choke on. Better Daddy's project manager than a backstabbing fraud. I spat back, my hands trembling as I gripped the edge of the mahogany dining table. At least I earned my position. Travis's face reddened. Everything was handed to you on a silver platter. You think anyone takes you seriously? They all know you're just Rick's puppet. My father cleared his throat. That's enough, Travis. This is supposed to be a family dinner. Family? Travis laughed, the sound hollow and cruel. Is that what we're calling this arrangement? Your precious daughter can't even handle basic responsibility without running to Daddy for help. The words hit like physical blows, each one carefully aimed at my deepest insecurities. I watched my mother-in-law, Eleanor, close her eyes in quiet disappointment. She'd always been more of a mother to me than Travis's son. Mummy, Ollie's voice was barely a whisper. Why is Daddy being mean? Something inside me snapped. Travis, get out! Excuse me. You heard me. Get out of my father's house. Now. He stood slowly, adjusting his expensive tie with deliberate precision. You know what? I think I will. Better than watching you play victim again. He turned to Eleanor. Coming, Mother. Eleanor remained seated, her hands folded in her lap. I think I'll stay and help clean up. The rejection flickered across Travis's face before his mask of contempt slipped back into place. He strode toward the door, pausing only to deliver one final barb. By the way, that merger you've been working so hard on? Don't bother. My team already closed the deal this morning. The blood drained from my face. That merger had been my project for the past 6 months. There was no way he could have known about it unless... You've been going through my files. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. You've been spying on me. His smile was razor-sharp. Prove it. The door slammed behind him, leaving a vacuum of silence in its wake. I felt my father's hand on my shoulder, heard Eleanor's soft murmur as she led Ollie from the room, but all I could focus on was the burning in my chest. I'm so sorry, sweetheart, my father said quietly. I never thought he'd... Don't. I cut him off, my voice steadier than I felt. This isn't your fault. But I need you to be honest with me, Dad. Did you know about the merger? He sank into his chair, suddenly looking every one of his 62 years. I got the call this afternoon. I was going to tell you tomorrow. I nodded slowly, pieces clicking into place. The late nights Travis had been working, the mysterious phone calls, the way he'd been needling me about work details that weren't his business. Joe, my father hesitated. What are you going to do? I looked at the wine staining the wall, at the scattered glass glinting like diamonds under the chandelier light. For the first time in years, I felt completely clear-headed. I'm going to destroy him, I said softly, and I'm going to enjoy every second of it. 3 days after the dinner disaster, I found Travis in Ollie's room, sitting on the edge of the race car bed, telling our son stories about how unstable I was becoming. Mummy just gets very angry sometimes, he was saying, stroking Ollie's hair. That's why Daddy has to work so hard to protect us both. My fingers curled into fists, but I forced them to relax. Ollie, sweetheart, time for breakfast. Go wash up. Travis didn't move as our son scampered past me. The moment Ollie was out of earshot, his gentle expression hardened into something uglier. "You're late for work again." "I'm exactly where I need to be." I stepped into the room, leaving the door open. "Stop poisoning our son against me." "Poisoning?" He laughed, standing up. "I'm preparing him for reality. You're becoming unhinged, Joe. First the scene at dinner, now these paranoid accusations about corporate espionage. You stole my merger. I made a better deal. That's business." He straightened his tie, a gesture I'd once found endearing. "Maybe if you spent less time playing office with Daddy and more time learning how the real world works." "Get out of his room." "It's my house too. For now." Something dangerous flickered in his eyes. He stepped closer, using his height to loom over me. "Is that a threat?" "Morning!" A cheerful voice cut through the tension. Nate Roberts stood in the hallway, tablet in hand. "Sorry to interrupt, but we have that strategy meeting in 20 minutes, Joe." Travis's jaw tightened. "Who the hell are you?" "Nathan Roberts, sir. New project lead under Joe." Nate's smile was professional, but his eyes were sharp. "We're restructuring after the merger situation. Your insight would actually be valuable, if you have time to consult." I watched Travis process this, saw the calculation behind his eyes. "Another time," he said finally. "I have my own meetings to attend." He brushed past Nate, bumping his shoulder hard enough to make the tablet wobble. We waited until his footsteps faded down the stairs. "You okay?" Nate asked quietly. "No." I sank onto Ollie's bed. "But thanks for the save. How did you know to come up?" "Eleanor called me. Said you might need backup this morning." He leaned against the door frame. "Smart woman, your mother-in-law." "Smarter than I was." I stood up, smoothing my skirt. "Did you bring the files?" Nate nodded, swiping through his tablet. 3 instances of unauthorized access to our servers from Travis's IP address. 2 meetings with our competitors that weren't on any official calendar. And this, he turned the screen toward me, a series of emails to someone named Chloe discussing insider information about the merger. My stomach clenched. "Chloe?" "Yeah, seems like a student intern at his company. The emails get pretty personal." The room tilted slightly. Of course there was another woman. There was always another woman with Travis. "Joe?" Nate's voice was gentle. "We don't have to do this now." "Yes, we do." I straightened my spine. "Send everything to my private email." And Nate, thank you for helping with this. "Hey, what are work friends for?" His smile faded. "Just be careful, okay? The way he looked at you just now, I know." I did know. I'd seen that look before, in the early days of our marriage when things first started going wrong. That's why we need to move fast. Downstairs, I could hear Ollie chattering about his breakfast. Travis's voice responded, all warmth and patience now that he had an audience. The perfect father, the perfect husband, the perfect lie. "One more thing," Nate said as I headed for the door. "Your father wants to meet, says it's important." I nodded, already mentally rearranging my day. "Tell him I'll be there at lunch. And Nate, watch your back. Travis isn't going to like you being involved." "Let him try something," Nate replied, his usual cheerfulness hardening into something more determined. "Some things are worth the risk." I touched the door frame where Travis had marked Ollie's height every birthday, wondering how many other memories in this house were as fake as my marriage. "Yes," I said quietly. "They are." The coffee shop was exactly the kind of pretentious place Travis would choose. All exposed brick and overpriced lattes. I watched Chloe Turner through the window, noting how young she looked hunched over her MacBook. 19, the same age I was when I first met Travis. My phone buzzed, a text from Nate. "You don't have to do this." But I did. I squared my shoulders and pushed through the door, the bell's cheerful jingle at odds with the acid in my stomach. "Chloe?" She looked up, confusion flickering across her face. "Yes?" "I'm Josephine Mitchell." I sat down across from her, watching recognition dawn in her eyes. "Travis's wife." The color drained from her face. Please don't lie. My voice was steadier than I felt. I've read the emails. Her laptop screen slammed shut. He told me you were separated. Of course he did. I pulled out my phone, found a recent picture of Ollie at his kindergarten graduation. Travis's arm was around my waist, both of us beaming at the camera. This was 3 weeks ago. Tears welled in her eyes. I'm so sorry. I didn't know. He said you were cruel to him, that you were using your father's company to destroy his career. A laugh bubbled up in my throat, bitter as black coffee. Did he also tell you about accessing confidential files? About using company information to sabotage deals? That was business, she whispered. He said everyone does it. And this? I slid my phone closer, showing her a security camera still from outside her apartment building. Travis entering at 2 a.m. Is this business too? The bell jingled again. I didn't need to look up to know who it was. Travis's cologne reached me before his voice did. What the hell are you doing? I turned slowly. Having coffee with your intern. She's lovely. Very young. Chloe, leave. His command was sharp enough to make her flinch. No, I said quietly. Stay. He needs an audience for this part. Travis grabbed my arm, fingers digging in. Outside. Now. Take your hand off me. I met his gaze steadily. Or I'll send these photos to your mother right now. His grip loosened, but his eyes burned with familiar rage. You're making a scene. No, you did that when you decided to fuck a teenager. Chloe made a small wounded sound. Other customers were staring now, phones discreetly raised. You want to do this here? Travis's voice dropped dangerously low. Fine. Tell everyone how you drove me to it. How you chose Daddy's company over your marriage. How you... Travis Mitchell. A man in a sharp suit approached our table. I'm Daniel Cooper, from the Securities and Exchange Commission. We'd like to ask you some questions about recent trading activities. The blood drained from Travis's face. What? Your wife's company filed some interesting documentation this morning. The man smiled thinly. Shall we discuss this somewhere more private? I stood, gathering my purse. I'll leave you to it. Oh, and Travis, Ollie's staying with my father tonight. Don't bother coming home. You vindictive bitch, he snarled. You really think you can... I already have. I turned to Chloe, who sat frozen in horror. He deletes his texts every night at 11, changes his email password weekly, and he'll never admit to anyone that he's wrong. I softened my voice. You deserve better than being someone's secret. Outside, the autumn air felt clean in my lungs. Nate was waiting by my car, concern etched on his face. You okay? I watched through the window as Travis gestured angrily at the SEC agent, his perfect facade crumbling. I will be. Your father's worried. Says you're taking too many risks. Tell him the risk was staying silent. I unlocked the car, then paused. Nate, thank you for helping me find the trading records. He shrugged. Some men need to learn they can't take whatever they want. Through the window, I saw Chloe gather her things and hurry out, tears streaming down her face. Part of me wanted to comfort her, but a larger part recognized that some lessons have to be learned alone. Come on, I said to Nate. We have a company to rebuild. The SEC investigation hit the news cycles faster than I expected. I watched my father's face as he read the headlines scrolling across his office monitor. Tech executive under investigation for industrial espionage. They're calling it a witch hunt, Dad said, rubbing his temples. Travis's company is claiming we fabricated evidence to destroy their reputation. I traced the rim of my coffee cup, now cold and untouched. We both know that's not true. Truth isn't always enough, Joe. He turned the monitor off, but the reflection in the window showed his worried expression. Travis's lawyers are good. They're painting you as a vindictive wife using Daddy's influence for revenge. Let them. The words came out sharper than intended. We have proof. We have complications. He slid a folder across his desk. Travis filed for emergency custody of Ollie this morning. The room tilted. I grabbed the edge of the desk, steadying myself. He what? Claims you're unstable, using company resources for personal vendettas, creating a hostile environment for Ollie. Dad's voice softened. There's more. Eleanor came to see me earlier. Of course she had. I'd been avoiding her calls since the coffee shop confrontation. What did she want? To warn us. Apparently, Travis has been recording your conversations, building a case for months. The coffee cup slipped from my fingers, shattering on the floor. Dark liquid spread across the carpet like blood. A knock at the door made us both jump. Nate stood there, his usually cheerful face grim. Sorry to interrupt, but you need to see this. He held up his phone. A video played, me at the coffee shop confronting Chloe. The angle was awkward, clearly shot by another customer, but the audio was clear. Tell everyone how you drove me to it. It's trending, Nate said quietly. Travis's PR team is spinning it as workplace harassment. They're saying you targeted a young intern to discredit their company. I watched myself on the tiny screen, saw how my controlled anger could be interpreted as threatening, saw how easily the truth could be twisted. Joe, my father's voice cut through the rising panic. Whatever you're thinking. I need to see Ollie. I grabbed my purse, already moving toward the door. He gets scared when his routine changes. He'll want his blue blanket for nap time. Joe, stop. Dad caught my arm. Travis's lawyers filed a temporary restraining order. You can't go near the house. The world narrowed to a single point of pain. He's my son. And we'll fight this, Nate said firmly. But right now, you need to be smart. One wrong move and Travis gets everything he wants. I yanked free from my father's grip, pacing the office like a caged animal. So I'm supposed to what? Sit here while he turns my son against me? While he destroys everything I've built? No. Dad's voice had that steel edge I remembered from childhood crises. You're supposed to trust us. Eleanor's already documenting Travis's manipulation of Ollie. Nate's tech team is tracing the source of those recordings, but you need to give us time. Time? I laughed, the sound brittle. While Travis plays the victim, while Ollie thinks I abandoned him, while we build a case that can't be dismissed as revenge, Nate corrected. You taught me that, Joe. Sometimes winning means playing the long game. I stared out the window at the city below, at all the people going about their normal lives, while mine imploded. Somewhere out there, my 5-year-old was wondering why his mother hadn't come home. Okay. I turned back to them, something cold and hard crystallizing in my chest. You want the long game? Let's play. But this time, we're changing the rules. Dad and Nate exchanged worried looks, but I was already pulling out my phone, scrolling through contacts until I found the number I needed. Who are you calling? Dad asked. Someone who knows all about Travis's games. I hit dial, waiting as it rang. Hello, Eleanor. We need to talk about your son. Eleanor's hands trembled as she slid the USB drive across the cafe table. He'll know it was me. No, he won't. I pocketed the drive, fighting the urge to check its contents immediately. Travis never thought you'd betray him. Like he betrayed me? Her laugh was hollow. Did you know he emptied my retirement account last year? Said it was for a business investment. She twisted her wedding ring, the one Travis's father had given her 30 years ago. I believed him. My phone buzzed. A text from Nate. Target moving, ETA 10 mins. He's coming, I told Eleanor. Remember the plan. She nodded, dabbing at her eyes. Just promise me something, Joe. When this is over, let Ollie know his grandmother tried to fix things. The cafe door chimed. Travis strode in, all polished confidence until he spotted me sitting with his mother. His steps faltered. What's going on here? Can't I have coffee with my daughter-in-law? Eleanor's voice was perfectly pitched, worried, slightly defensive. Not when there's a restraining order. Travis turned to me, jaw clenched. Leave, now. Actually, I checked my watch. I have 4 minutes before I'm in violation. Plenty of time for you to explain to your mother about Chloe's abortion. The color drained from his face. Eleanor gasped. Mother, she's lying. The clinic records say otherwise. I stood slowly. Along with the wire transfers from your mother's retirement account. Tell me, Travis, does your PR team have a spin for that? His hand shot out, grabbing my wrist. You vindictive. Travis Mitchell? A woman in a sharp suit approached our table. I'm Detective Sarah Chen. We'd like to ask you some questions about certain financial transactions. Behind her, 2 uniformed officers positioned themselves near the exits. Through the window, I saw Nate giving a thumbs up from his car. This is harassment, Travis snarled, but his grip loosened. No, Eleanor said quietly. This is karma. She pulled out her phone, showing him the screen. A recording was playing, his voice clear as he detailed plans to embezzle company funds. Mother. I'm sorry, baby. Tears rolled down her cheeks. But I can't watch you destroy more lives. Travis lunged for the phone. The officers moved faster, catching his arms as Detective Chen read him his rights. The cafe had gone silent, phones recording everything. You'll regret this, he spat at me as they led him away. I'll make sure Ollie knows exactly what kind of mother you are. No, I replied calmly. He'll know what kind of father you are. The court-appointed guardian is reviewing your recordings right now, the ones where you coached him to lie about me. His face contorted with rage, but the officers were already escorting him out. Through the window, I watched them guide him into a patrol car, his perfect suit wrinkled, his carefully constructed world crumbling. Eleanor's sob broke the silence. I reached for her hand, but she pulled away. I did the right thing, she whispered, more to herself than to me. I did the right thing. My phone buzzed again. A message from Dad. Ollie's guardian called. You can see him tomorrow. Relief made my knees weak. I sank back into my chair, the weight of the past weeks pressing down on me. Was it worth it? Eleanor asked suddenly. All this pain, this destruction, was revenge worth it? I thought about Ollie, about the look in Travis's eyes when he realized his own mother had turned against him, about the years I'd spent doubting myself. It wasn't about revenge, I said finally. It was about truth. Sometimes they just look the same. Outside, rain began to fall, washing away the last traces of Travis's fingerprints on the cafe window. Tomorrow, I would hold my son again. Tomorrow, we would begin rebuilding. But today, sitting across from the woman who had sacrificed everything to help me, I understood that victory and loss were sometimes the same thing too. The holding cell smelled like despair and cheap disinfectant. I pressed my forehead against the cold concrete wall, trying to process how everything had gone so catastrophically wrong. Your father's lawyer is on his way, Nate said through the bars. Just hang tight. Did they find Ollie? His hesitation told me everything. After Travis's arrest, our son had vanished, along with a significant portion of Eleanor's remaining savings and Travis's emergency passport. He couldn't have gotten far, Nate offered. Every airport's been notified. He's not going to airports. My voice sounded hollow even to me. He's punishing me, making sure I feel exactly what he felt when we took everything from him. Detective Chen appeared behind Nate, her expression grim. Mrs. Mitchell, we need to discuss the new evidence that surfaced. They led me to an interview room where a laptop waited. The video playing showed me in Eleanor's kitchen 2 weeks ago, carefully going through Travis's personal files. That's breaking and entering, Chen said quietly. Combined with the harassment charges from Miss Turner and the corporate espionage allegations, those files proved he was stealing. They were obtained illegally. She closed the laptop. Your husband's legal team is pushing for maximum charges. They're painting you as obsessed, vindictive, willing to break any law to destroy him. And Ollie, if we find him with your husband, given these circumstances, she let the implications hang in the air. My father burst into the room, followed by our family lawyer. Joe, don't say another word, but I barely heard them. My phone had just lit up with a message from an unknown number. A photo of Ollie, sleeping on what looked like a boat cabin bed. Below it, Travis's words, "You took my life, seems fair I take yours." He's on his father's boat, I whispered, the one in Marina del Rey. Joe, my father warned, let the police handle this. Like they handled the restraining order, the custody hearing. I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. Every time we've done things the right way, he's been 3 steps ahead. Mrs. Mitchell, Chen interjected, if you leave now... You'll what? Arrest me again? I laughed, the sound brittle. My son is with a man who's facing criminal charges, who's already proven he'll do anything for revenge. Every minute we wait. Nate stepped forward. I'll drive. Both of you will stay right here, my father commanded. Joe, think about what you're risking. I looked at him, really looked at him, seeing for the first time how old he'd grown during this ordeal. I'm sorry, Dad, but I stopped playing by the rules the moment he involved Ollie. The next few moments were chaos. I remember Nate creating a distraction, remember running through the station, remember the blast of cold air as I hit the parking lot. Detective Chen's shouts faded behind me as I hot-wired Travis's old car, the one thing he'd left in our garage. My phone buzzed again. Another photo. Ollie awake now, looking confused and scared. Travis's message below. Better hurry. Tide's going out. The engine roared to life. In the rearview mirror, I saw police vehicles starting to move. My father stood on the steps, phone to his ear, probably calling in every favor he had to stop me. But all I could see was Ollie's face. All I could think about was Travis's words at the cafe. I'll make sure Ollie knows exactly what kind of mother you are. Well, he was about to find out. Because the woman driving through red lights, the one with police sirens wailing behind her, the one who'd finally stopped caring about consequences, that woman wasn't just a mother. She was someone with nothing left to lose. I pressed the accelerator harder, watching the speedometer climb. 3 hours until high tide. 2 hours to Marina del Rey in good traffic. And somewhere ahead, my son, and the man who thought he could take him from me. I'm coming, baby, I whispered, swerving around a slow-moving truck. Mommy's coming. Behind me, the sirens grew louder, but I didn't slow down. Sometimes, I realized, you have to become the very thing you're fighting against to protect what matters most. The marina's security lights cast long shadows across the empty docks. Travis's boat, the Sweet Revenge, a name that now felt like a twisted joke, rocked gently in its berth. No lights on, but I knew they were there. A mother always knows. My phone buzzed. Detective Chen. We're 5 minutes out. Do not approach the boat. I switched the phone off and moved closer, keeping to the shadows. The cabin door was ajar, inviting me in. Travis had always loved his little traps. Daddy? Ollie's voice drifted up from below deck. I want Mommy. Mummy's coming, sport. Travis's voice was gentle, the way it used to be before everything shattered. In fact, she should be here any second now. I stepped onto the boat, the deck creaking beneath my feet. No point in stealth now. You're late, Travis called up. Traffic on the 405. Where is he? Safe, which is more than I can say for your future. His laugh echoed from below. Come down. Let's talk about custody arrangements. The cabin stairs felt endless. Travis sat at the small table, Ollie curled up against him, clutching his blue blanket. My son's eyes lit up when he saw me, but Travis's arm tightened around him. Careful now, Travis warned. We wouldn't want any sudden movements to rock the boat. That's when I saw it, the small device in his free hand, wires trailing down through a hole in the floor. The boat's bilge pump controls, modified. One push, he said softly, and the pump reverses. How long do you think it takes a boat this size to sink? You'd kill your own son? I'd save him, be the hero who rescued him from his unstable mother's last desperate act. His smile was razor-sharp. The security cameras will show you boarding alone. Everyone knows how unhinged you've become. Ollie squirmed. Daddy, you're squeezing too tight. I took a step forward. Travis's finger tightened on the device. You know what's funny? He said. I actually loved you once. Before you became Daddy's perfect little successor. Before you made me feel small in my own home. You did that yourself. Did I? Who pushed for separate bank accounts? Who insisted on keeping her maiden name professionally? Who turned my own mother against me? You stole her retirement, Travis. I borrowed it. I would have paid it back after the merger. His composure cracked. But you couldn't wait, could you? Had to prove you were smarter, better, more worthy. Worthy of what? The question burst out before I could stop it. What were you trying to prove? Something flickered in his eyes. Pain, maybe, or recognition. For a moment, I saw the man I'd married drowning in his own insecurities. Then Ollie sneezed. The sound startled Travis. His grip loosened just enough. I lunged forward as Ollie slipped free, running to me. Travis scrambled for the device, but Eleanor emerged from the forward cabin, fire extinguisher in hand. The metal connected with Travis's wrist with a sickening crack. The device clattered to the floor. "Mum!" Travis stared at her in shock. "How?" "I've been here since you arrived," Eleanor said quietly, waiting to see if my son was still in there somewhere. Footsteps thundered above. Detective Chen's voice rang out. "Police! Everyone stay where you are!" Travis looked at his mother, then at me and Ollie. Something broke in his expression. "I just wanted," he whispered, but couldn't finish. "I know," Eleanor said, and there were tears in her eyes, but wanting isn't enough anymore. As the police led Travis away, I held Ollie close, breathing in his familiar scent. Eleanor stood at the rail, watching her son disappear into a squad car. "Was it worth it?" she asked, echo of our cafe conversation. "All this pain?" I looked at Ollie, safe in my arms, at Travis, finally facing his demons, at Eleanor, who'd lost and saved everything in one night. "Ask me tomorrow," I said softly. "Tonight I just want to take my son home." The marina lights flickered, casting new shadows across the water. Sometimes, I realized, there are no winners in revenge, only survivors. The courthouse steps felt colder than they should in summer. I watched Travis being led away in handcuffs, his designer suit replaced by prison orange. He didn't look back. "Mommy, can we get ice cream?" Ollie tugged at my hand, already moving past the scene that would haunt my dreams for years. "Sure, baby." I forced a smile. "Let's ask Grandma Eleanor to join us." Eleanor stood apart from the small crowd, clutching her purse like a shield. The trial had aged her a decade, each revelation about Travis's crimes cutting deeper than the last. "I'll pass," she said quietly. "I need some time to—" She gestured vaguely at the courthouse, at the reporters packing up their cameras, at the life she'd known crumbling around her. "I understand." And I did. Victory tasted different when you had to burn down your own house to win. My father waited by his car, Nate beside him reviewing documents on his tablet. The company hadn't stopped running just because our lives had imploded. "The board meeting's in an hour," Nate reminded me. "They'll want to discuss the merger recovery plan." "They can wait." I knelt before Ollie, straightening his little tie. "Today's about ice cream." "And sprinkles?" His eyes lit up, Travis's eyes in a gentler face. "And sprinkles." A familiar figure caught my attention, Chloe Turner, hovering uncertainly near the courthouse entrance. Our eyes met. She started to approach, then stopped, her youth and vulnerability stark in the harsh sunlight. "Go ahead," I told Nate. "I'll catch up." Chloe's hands twisted together as I approached. "I just wanted to say, I'm sorry, for everything." "I know." He seemed so... She struggled for words. Perfect, until he wasn't. That's what makes men like Travis dangerous. I watched Ollie climbing into my father's car, already chattering about ice cream flavors. They show you exactly what you want to see. "How do you start over?" The question burst from her like a confession. After someone breaks you apart, I thought about the wine glass shattering against the wall that first night, about Eleanor's trembling hands passing me the USB drive, about Travis's face when his own mother testified against him. "You don't start over," I said finally. "You build something new from the pieces you have left." She nodded, understanding more than her 19 years should allow. As she walked away, I saw a shadow of my younger self, The woman who once believed love meant making yourself smaller. Ready to go? My father called. Almost. I turned to Eleanor, still standing alone. Ice cream offer still stands. Ollie would love his grandmother there. She hesitated. Joe, I don't know if I can... We're both building something new, I said softly. Might as well do it together. A ghost of a smile crossed her face. She took one last look at the courthouse doors, then walked toward us. My phone buzzed. A text from Detective Chen. Travis wants to talk. Says it's important. I deleted the message without responding. Some conversations weren't worth having anymore. In the car, Ollie debated ice cream toppings with his grandmother, while my father and Nate discussed quarterly projections. Normal life, piecing itself back together in small moments. Mommy, Ollie's voice pulled me from my thoughts. Are you still angry at Daddy? The question hung in the air. Eleanor's breath caught. My father's hands tightened on the steering wheel. No, baby. I touched his cheek, seeing futures branching out before us. Some bright, some dark, all uncertain. I'm not angry anymore, just ready for our next adventure. He beamed, satisfied with the answer only a child could accept so simply. But as we drove toward the ice cream shop, I caught Eleanor's knowing look in the rearview mirror. Sometimes revenge isn't about destroying someone else. Sometimes it's about refusing to let them destroy you. Sprinkles, I decided, making Ollie giggle. Definitely sprinkles, because that's how you build something new. One small, sweet choice at a time.